Hi everyone, welcome back to Be Rich. We've been talking about the effects of a strong dollar on the yen. I thought today we'll expand a little bit further and see what's happening in Asia and maybe what's going to be happening in the world with a strong dollar and the headache it is for not only the central banks but even for American partners and even the US. And discuss a little bit the complexity when it comes to trading with the dollar right now when the dollar is so strong and everyone around the world trying to figure out what is the best move to do and where the actual inflations are and where actual interest rate should be so they can think about a monetary policy which will align itself with a strong dollar so they can save themselves from the fierce fire a strong dollar releases. Now, the reason why we say the dollar is strong is because of the way the interest rates are in the US. In simple terms, like we explained it, there's an arbitrage simply in currency. With the exchange rate the way they are, you can take money from one of the developing countries or country which has a lower exchange rate, even if it's developed like Japan, take that money and take it across to US and invest it in US securities, and you'll be getting a very smart spread, even spread, which is far better than trying to fish in local markets, trying to find the 5%, 6% gain. So if you have a lot of money and you just want to keep it secure, instead of keeping it in your country and taking a lower interest rate, let's say in the government bonds, you move it to the US and take American securities which are offering a much higher return. So what happens is more and more capital, that is money, flows into the US. That makes the other currencies weaker compared to US because there's less demand for those currencies compared to the US, making the US dollar more and more expensive while other currencies cheaper. If you think about it logically, it makes sense. But there's also further dynamics in this, which is not only do we have an American currency and the rest of the world with their currencies, it doesn't only interact alone with American currencies. These currencies interact with each other because countries within Asia also export and import from each other. So there also lies a problem. So this is where it all gets complicated, and the volume of money we are talking about is running in trillions of dollars, and it gets very complicated. And there's very little central banks can do when this is happening. So, for example, let's take Asian central banks facing this challenge due to the strong dollar, and there's a prospect of no interest cut happening this year. That is intensifying the pressure on Asian currencies like the yen, renminbi, and the won. We are going to talk about these three main currencies today, which is yen, which we have spoken about, renminbi, which is the Chinese currency, and won, which is the Korean currencies. Policies in Japan, China, and Korea have been focused in stabilizing their currency amidst this pressure. So, if you look at this chart, which I've asked Rupesh to share, it plots you how yen has performed since against the dollar from the 1990s all the way till date. So, this rise and fall of the yen against the dollar, which you see, is dollar actually moving more than the yen actually moving, because this is a good graph to understand because the Japanese yen has been at zero interest rate for such a long period of time. It is nice to see this as an analysis to show you the effect of a dollar moving up and down can have on another currency when the other currency is just sitting on a base level. This is why I picked the yen graph compared to the Chinese graph and the Korean graph, because their currency interest rates have also been fluctuating. So you can't get a real understanding what happens with the dollar and your own home currency. The yen, on the other hand, gives you a clear idea because the yen has been at zero interest rate. So as the American interest rates have been going up and down, the capital has been fluctuating in and out of Japan, as you can see. So this is what happens when the interest rates in the US move around. The yen has reached a 35-year-old low against the dollar, while the renminbi's value has fallen below the Chinese central bank's reference rate. The Chinese are not a fully convertible free currency. They have controls over their currency. They're like a quasi-free currency. So the central bank does give a little bit of freedom and it's allowed to fluctuate within boundaries. But it does not allow to free fall, like what happens with the yen, which is a fully free currency. The South Korean won has also seen significant weakening against the dollar. And this is very apparent because if you see the interest rate in South Korea is been sitting at 3.5 in April. This is this current month, April 24, while the US is sitting at a 5.5. So that difference has been squeezing the Korean markets, and a lot of speculators have been hoping that since January that there will be an interest rate cut, not only one cut, that the American markets will have 3 rate cuts, so we don't need to worry about it. But now is becoming more and more evident that inflation pressure in the US is there. And with the strong dollar, what's happening is it's adding further inflation pressure because wages rises is there in the US, plus importing goods into the US is becoming cheaper and cheaper, driving further inflation in the US. So it is a complicated issue which the Fed is looking at. So looking at that, they're not going to be cutting interest rate has become very apparent. So this disparity between, let's say, the Korean won and the American dollar now looks like it's stabilized and it's going to be there for some time. That leads to pressure for the Korean currency because it just makes more sense to take your money out of Korea and keep it in the US because you get a much better return sitting in the American market. So this kind of issue is what the Korean central banks are dealing with. US, Japan, and South Korea have got together and released a statement expressing their concern about currency depreciation. And the Chinese central bank, meanwhile, has warned against one-sided bets on the RMB, meaning saying don't short our currency is what they're saying. And limiting the chance of intervention from the US, Japan have also been highlighted. So this is what it means when there are such dynamic forces. Yes, the Americans and the Japanese and Koreans are coming out and saying, issuing statements saying, yes, they're keeping an eye on it, they're concerned about it. But at the flip of it, there's very little they can really do about it. Like I spoke about what Larry Summers said, that they can have an impact on this currency right now the way it is. Because of the forces of inflation on each country internally, they cannot move their interest rates on par. So like Korea cannot suddenly increase its interest rates to match the American interest rates, or Japan cannot raise its interest rates to match the American interest rates because of domestic issues and domestic pressures facing in each country. That's why it gets far more complicated when you really look at it in an nuanced manner. So what are the challenges facing for these banks? Central banks' ability to influence these markets in a single policy intervention through verbal public comments is very limited. Even a joint intervention by the G7 members are rare and typically occur only in a crisis situation, and we have not reached a crisis situation. The Japanese central bank has hinted of a potential interest rate hike if the impact of the weaker yen seems more prolonged. So this, if you look at it, is an issue not only for Japan or America, it's a global issue, and I'm trying to highlight this to you, why it's a global issue. And even the Chinese have a problem. If the Chinese try to control the RMB amidst these challenges against the dollar, this puts pressure against the RMB in its local environment, in its local ecosystem. If the RMB becomes too strong, that means China will stop becoming competitive against its Asian rivals around it. So that also is a problem for the Chinese to think about. So in conclusion, while the central banks in Asia are grappling with these challenges, with a strong dollar, a varying response and policy dilemma across these countries is not going to solve the issue. With a strong dollar here to stay, this is what Anand has been warning about and staying repeatedly telling you guys when you're investing, when you're making these moves, be very careful because currency movements and these kind of policies are very impactful in our markets, and we can see the way FIS have pulling their money out and deciding to bring money back in. This ebb and flow which you're saying is completely tied to what happens between the dollar and the other currencies. So thank you for watching this video. I hope it can give you a clarity on why currency rates are important and how these central bank policies are important. And I'll see you in the next one soon. Bye.
It's a great privilege and honor that so many of you in thousands have subscribed to my channel and have supported me. I have written 2 books in English, The Alchemy of Money and Ordinary Stocks, Extraordinary Profits. These books are published by us and are ready. If you want to procure a copy, send us a message to the WhatsApp number given below and my team would respond to you. If you want an Amazon Kindle copy, you can click the link below. Finally, those who wish to consult with me can send a mail to berichenglish@gmail.com. Once again, I thank you for your support. If you like this video, press the subscribe button of my channel, hit the like button and turn on the bell notification.